Hey, book lovers. Welcome to While I Read. I'm Katie, and as you can see, I'm here today with cozy mystery author Ellie Alexander. I'm so excited to have Ellie here today. She's going to talk to us about her books, about her writing process, about what she likes to read, and who knows what else we'll talk about. So, Ellie, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh my gosh, it's such a delight. Thanks for having me.
I have been so excited that we were going to do this today. So, Ellie and I met because I asked her to be my writing coach, and we'll talk about that a little later about the writing coaching that she does. She's great. But the main thing that I want us to talk about today is her books. So, Ellie, tell us about the Secret Bookcase series and specifically about the sixth book in that, A Body at the Book Fair, which is coming out very soon.
It is coming out very soon. This is going to conclude the series. So when I started this series, I had a clear ending point in mind, which doesn't always happen. In fact, often it's the other way around. You sort of start writing and then things develop and grow. But for this one, because there's a subplot that runs through all six books in the series, I knew we had to solve that by this book. And then we are going to have some more fun, like this character of Annie Murray, who is a bookseller slash book slinger, I like to call her. She works for an Agatha Christie inspired bookshop. Um, She's been on this quest since book one to solve the murder of her best friend Scarlett, who died right before they graduated college.
Yes, I love the overarching plot where Annie is trying to figure out how to solve Scarlett's murder. And then I love that in every book, there is, of course, another murder that takes place that Annie has to solve with the help from her friends and coworkers in her town.
Yeah, exactly. It's really fun. And for me, because I've written a lot of series, up until this point, all of my sleuths are very amateur, meaning that like a pastry chef or a home brewer or a novice journalist solves the crime. And with this series, I think basically just sort of where I'm at with my career, I needed something that was a little fresher. It's slightly darker. It's still in the cozy vibe. It's not going to keep you up at night. But Annie has this history in criminology. She's studied criminology. She's done an apprenticeship under her professor, who's now the detective in town. So I like getting to explore a character like this who actually should be on a crime scene, because most of the time my sleuth should not be anywhere near a crime scene.
Yes, I'm always so impressed with Annie because she knows what she's doing. She's like, oh, I've got to do CPR. Oh, I've got to do this, and I'm like, I would just be standing there like, oh, what do I do? And waiting for somebody else, which is what you're not supposed to do in an emergency. But I feel like
Right.
that's totally what I would do.
Exactly, right? Yeah. Or like, in one of my other series where there's a pastry chef solving the crime, she's going to be the one who's like, let me taste it and see. Is it raspberry jam? Is it blood? Like, no,
Yeah.
get your gloves on, get away. Like, we're shutting this down. Yeah. So it's a good juxtaposition, I guess, for me after writing so many very, very novice sleuths, which is what we do, as you know, writing this genre. I mean, that is part of the fun of a cozy, is that in theory, any of us, you and I, could stumble upon a body and maybe insert ourselves into a crime scene.
Yes. It would probably not be a good thing if
No,
but it could.
it
So
could.
you talked about this a little bit, but many cozy series do go on for a long time. Like I think your Bakeshop series, are you on book 22 now
I
in the
am.
Bakeshop series?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, a lot of times we think about cozies as just going on for a long time. So, why did you make the decision to end the Secret Bookcase series after only six books?
Yeah, well, I think in part because it really was dictated by this subplot, which has been driving the whole story forward. Like you mentioned, there is always a standalone murder in each book. So if somebody comes and picks it up at book three or four, you're still going to have a very satisfying, hopefully, read where you're solving one crime and then you're getting these tidbits of this backstory. But the goal was to have closure with that, because I know for myself as a longtime reader of the genre and of series in general, with a subplot like that where every book you're kind of leaving off with a touch of a cliffhanger too, um, I get frustrated and I forget, because I don't just exclusively read, one author. I don't think any of us do. And so I didn't, from my writing lens, want readers to have to come to a space where it's like, oh, I have to do all this homework to get caught up. And one of the gifts of this series is that because it's with my new publishing house in the UK, they have a much more rapid release schedule. So
Mhm.
books are coming out 3 or 4 months apart from one another. Whereas with some of my other series, it might be a year between books. So that's a long time to track a subplot. And it's a hard ask for readers, I think.
It is. Yeah. And, sometimes I don't like it when a series ends quickly because I want to keep finding out about these characters. But it was kind of refreshing in some ways to know, okay, this is a 6 book series. And after that, I'm going to be free to move on to other books. But I have read this book now. I read an arc of it and it was so good. I've done a reading vlog about it and, it was a 5-star read for me. I loved it. I love the whole series. But there is at the end a hint, and I can
Mhm.
edit this out if I need
No,
to.
no, no. Yeah.
There, there is the spin-off series that is coming, Novel Detectives. So can you tell us anything about that?
Yeah, I can. When we got to book 6, because I was going back and forth, this process for me is really collaborative with my editor. So I will send her basically a glorified first draft, and she does a full editorial letter, and that's part of the process in terms of writing this series faster too, which is just such a gift to get that level of editorial support. So we got to book 6, and I was like, I don't think there's enough legs to go even for a book 7. I'm ready to wrap up this subplot. And she was like, well, I know, but we're not really ready to be done with Annie yet, are we?
Yes.
And I was like,
No.
well, I
We're not.
know. So she's like, what do you think about doing some kind of spinoff with her? And I had already been moving her towards this idea of she's really at a crossroads in terms of she loves working at the secret bookcase, she's bookish, all those things, but her passion has always been criminology. And so she's on this trajectory to sort of follow that dream too. So the spinoff of the novel detectives, we are going to see her really leaning into doing that work in the world while we will still have the entire cast, Fletcher and Hal Christie, who owns the bookstore, and all the characters from Redwood Grove. But
Yeah.
Annie's going to be doing something slightly different in this new spinoff.
Yes. It's hard to choose a favorite character, but I really love Hal. Hal is convinced that he is related to Agatha Christie. And I just love that. And I love that mystery of Agatha Christie because it really is true that she went away for a while. Nobody knew where she was. But Hal thinks he knows where she was. So I
Hal
love
has an idea. I know.
yeah.
When I was in middle school, I read every single Agatha Christie book that was in my local library. And I just was obsessed with Agatha Christie. I have since read every biography. And when I started this series, I did another deep dive because I've studied a lot about this missing chunk of time for her. And no one to this day still knows.
Mhm.
No one actually really thinks that she had a secret love child. That's not really on the radar.
Except
That's my
Hal.
own. Yeah, exactly. But I've done the math. Like it could work. She was
Yeah.
35 at the time. So it's
Yeah.
not out of the realm of possibilities.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I love that so much. So yeah, I love the secret bookcase. And I was so interested in what you told me in one of our meetings about writing, and you mentioned it just a few minutes ago here about your publishing house, Storm,
Yeah.
and how you told me that they had done some research into when readers' attention kind of starts waning in a cozy mystery. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, yeah, I think it's fascinating because so much of publishing, we like to think that it's like, oh, books just sort of magically show up on the shelves, but publishing is an industry and it's a behemoth, and so it's the job of the team at the publishing house to follow trends and all of those sort of things. And a lot of readers tend to fall off after like book 5, 6, 7 of a series because, like we've talked about, there's just so much out there.
Mhm.
And so one of their marketing strategies then is like, hey, we know we have this series that people are really resonating with. Here's a great way to continue that in kind of a fresh way and also potentially bring in a new chunk of readers because the novel detective is going to launch as its own series. And it is going to be slightly different because Annie is going to be working as a private detective while she's still dabbling in the bookstore, of course, like you do. And so for this spin-off, I'm going to get to explore some things like cold cases and missing persons and all the things that would actually,
Mhm.
be in a private detective's wheelhouse, which don't always work in a true cozy.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I felt like I just got this like secret insider knowledge when you told me that about how, oh yeah, the attention starts waning after about the sixth book. And so if we do this, we have this new series, we might pick up some new readers as well as the readers of the Secret Bookcase series. So go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, I was going to say, and that's even true for the longer running series that I've written too. I am the kind of writer that I always tend to lean toward a subplot. Like I'm thinking through all of my series,
Mhm.
and short of the Bakeshop, which has been the longest running, they've all had some kind of secondary mystery. But even with that, I know after book six, like you kind of got to keep it fresh and find a way to just keep readers' attention because it's a big ask to have somebody come along for 22, 23 books.
Yeah, yeah. I was also thinking about what you said, that if you set one of your cozy mysteries in a different location from the setting that readers love, then
Oh
you
yeah.
might get a few like disgruntled emails from readers who don't like it. And when you said that, I was like, oh, but I love it when they're set in a different location. But then I have to say, when I started reading the sixth book, and I was like, what? It's not all taking place at the books in Redwood Grove. I was a little like, oh no, but then I did enjoy it being in a different location. I just was a little surprised by it, but it was
I
good.
know. No, and I mean it's the same thing for me. And again, having been such a reader of series, that's always fun for me because I'm like, oh, we're going somewhere new.
Yeah,
But yes, it's a cautionary tale, I would say, because
yeah.
I've gotten a lot of reader feedback over the years from people being like, you better get Jules right back to Ashland immediately, or same for Annie. Like, okay, she can go to Santa Clara, but she better be back in Redwood Grove next book.
Yes.
I mean, I think what that speaks to is the other piece of this genre that I think we all use as escapism, really, is that you are hopefully building a world that readers want to visit and venture to. And there's a little bit of like a fairy tale to it, that you're in this adorable, sweet little town with cute shops and this
Mhm.
idea that the whole community is going to rally together to solve the crime and bring justice to the world. Like, I think that element is unique to this genre for sure.
Yes, that is one of the things that makes cozy so much fun to read. It's one of the things that drew me to want to write cozy mysteries because the setting and the secondary characters are so important. You want to live in that main character's world. You want to live in their cute little house or work in their cute little bake shop or bookstore or whatever it is. So yeah, that's what makes cozy so great. And in addition to the Secret Bookcase series, which that's how I started reading you, I heard about the Secret Bookcase series on another YouTube channel, and I was like, oh, this sounds like it's right up my alley. I've got to check this out. And then I found out, oh, Ellie Alexander also has the Bakeshop Mystery series, which I've started. I'm on book 4 in that series. I'm really enjoying it.
You're good. Yeah.
I'm so glad I've got so many more books in that series to read.
You could take a break, it's good.
Well, I go back and forth. I read that. I'll read one in
Right.
that series and then I'll go read something else and I'll read another one in that series. And it's always there, like, what am I going to read next? Oh, maybe a bake shop mystery. See what Jules is up to.
What is she doing in the kitchen, right? Yeah.
Yes. My mom is also reading that series and is loving it. So we talk about it. She's reading book 4 now. So we love to talk about it together. And of course, the mother
Oh,
daughter relationship is such a big part of that series. And then
yes.
you've also got the Sloane Krause mystery series. And then you have a standalone book. So do you want to talk with us just about all of your series and your books that you have going?
Yeah, I know. It's sort of impossible. And I've told you during our coaching sessions, it's a little bit of a slippery slope. I think once you start, it's like the ideas build upon each other. And I wouldn't be surprised if you're like, I might have another series in me too.
I've started another series now, Ellie. That's what I'm working
Right?
on.
Exactly. It's like you open up those creative floodgates. I know because readers will also often say, like, oh, you just must really struggle to come up with ideas. I do not struggle to come up with ideas. I don't know if this has been true for you yet. What I struggle with is time to do all the things that I want to do,
Yep.
for sure. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so my Bakeshop series is set in Ashland, Oregon, and that features Juliet Montague Capshaw, and she is a very romantic pastry chef. And in the first book, she leaves her career and her husband on this boutique cruise ship that she's been working on and comes back to Ashland. And her arc is sort of about kind of healing herself and finding home. And she ends up running her family bake shop with her mom, Helen. And Ashland, Oregon is a real place. I lived there for a big chunk of time. I also grew up there because my dad was a professor and he taught Shakespeare. So from a very young age, he had me quoting sonnets and soliloquies and reading all the classics, and I did not appreciate it at the time. My mom was a cozy mystery reader, so I'd be like, "Oh, give me this." But now, in hindsight, I'm so glad that I had this breadth of experience in terms of my reading. So growing up, we would go to the Oregon Shakespeare Festival in the summer to see plays. And then my Sloane Krause series is set in a Bavarian village, Leavenworth, Washington. And that series came about because my husband, we were living in Portland at the time, and he was homebrewing because craft beer is big in the Pacific Northwest.
Mhm.
And there was this conference called the Pink Boots Society about women in the industry who were working together to kind of raise women in whatever form they were working in craft beer, because it just, there weren't a lot of women in the industry at the time. And I was so fascinated. So I ended up connecting with one of the women who was spearheading the movement. And then it all just steamrolled from there.
Yeah, I have not started the Sloane Krause series yet, but I want to. I know I have a friend who does some home brewing.
Oh, nice.
My dad did a little of it. He grew muscadines on his farm and he would make muscadine wine, but it
Ooh.
was really hard. And so the last few years, we'd just been getting my friend to, we'd pick some muscadines and she would make the wine for us. So he was interested in that. So I definitely want to start that series soon.
So cool. So have you ever tried to make the muscadine wine then? Do you think
No,
you
like I
no.
was around while my dad was doing it. Like
Yeah.
it's been like probably 10 years ago that he was doing it. And I was in the house and it was like I just remember this big like vat sitting in the house, like aging, or I don't even remember what was going on. But yeah, it was kind of a crazy thing that he was doing, and his wine did not turn out very well, but
Yeah.
but he enjoyed doing it. And then my
Right.
friend, when he would give my friend the wine, and she actually knew what she was doing, her wine is very good. So
That's amazing. I know because it really is. I love to bake. That's how the Bakeshop Mysteries, came to be because baking has always been a love language in our whole family. But I am fascinated by the craft of beer because it really is that art and science, a lot like baking, like you can put your own spin on a bread dough, but you have to know how the yeast is going to rise and proof and all that kind of thing, all that kind of stuff. And for brewing, it's even more and like the equipment and yeah. My
yeah.
husband had a few fails too. There's a
Yeah.
rosemary beer that I remember that was supposed to have like a hint of rosemary, and I think he put like the whole rosemary bush in, and it
Yeah.
was not
Yeah.
one note.
Yeah. And then you also have, is it the Pacific Northwest series? Is that the name of it? And
Yeah, that's my very first series, but that's going to be re-released this summer.
okay, yeah, I am excited about that because I have read your query letter for that because you
Oh
sent me
yeah.
that as an example of a query letter. And so when I read it, I was like, "Ooh, I want to read that." And I was like, "Is that a real book that she wrote?" And then you told me that it's about to be re-released pretty soon. So I'm going to try that.
Yeah, it's been quite the process because I wrote those. That's my very first series that I wrote, and I wrote them well, starting in like 2010. The first book was published in 2014, so we're going on a chunk of time,
Yeah,
decade.
yeah,
And so to prepare for the re-release, they're getting new covers, new titles. We did a whole refresh on them, but going back through it, it's like reading historical fiction because
yeah,
so many
yeah,
things are dated. Like
yeah.
it changed so much. And that was also a good lesson for me and something that I'm trying to impart to my writing students too. Like, you know, unless you're going for really cementing a particular story in a place and time. Like I'm thinking Sue Grafton was really intentional about, did you ever read that series
I did
about
not read Sue Grafton.
okay, she's great. If you want to go
Yeah,
back
I
and
know,
read.
I know a lot of people who really love Sue Grafton. I just haven't. I haven't read
Yeah.
her.
Yeah. Well,
I
maybe
should.
we'll force you. No. But anyway, she set that intentionally. I mean, she started writing them in the 80s, but she kept them in the 80s, which is kind of a gift because Kinsey never like has a cell phone or any of those issues. But um, in terms of using modern slang and a lot of like super cultural references, which I was doing intentionally when I first wrote that series, it doesn't hold up so well.
Yeah,
Um, so it's been a good lesson for me too to be like, all right, we don't need to go deep into that she's on Snapchat. We could just say social media or
yeah,
like whatever the media is. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, that's interesting because you're right, things have changed a lot since 2010 and our language has changed and a lot of things have changed. So that is something that authors should be aware of as we're writing. So, Ellie, how did you become interested in writing? And specifically, how did you become a cozy mystery writer?
Yeah, I mean, my path was very meandering, I would say. I was a prolific reader growing up. Like I mentioned, my dad, the classics, my mom, cozy mysteries, my grandma read cozy mysteries. So mysteries were always just sort of there. I wrote a lot, even as a kid. I wrote my first mystery when I was in second grade. I still have a copy of it. My,
What's the name of it?
the House on the Haunted Hill.
Oh,
So the hill is haunted, I guess that means.
okay. Okay.
I don't think yeah.
Mhm.
And really reading back through it's a cozy because it's about these two young girls whose bikes break down in front of a haunted mansion and there are cobwebs and it's spooky. But then at the end of the day, they find a bicycle repair kit and they ride off into the sunset, right? So it's not that scary.
I love it.
Yeah, and like all through my school years, I would just write everything I could. Essays, obviously, but then bad poetry, short stories, songs. I mean, I was writing anything I could think of. I minored in creative writing in college, but I didn't really know what I wanted to write. I just knew at some point I wanted to write a book. And I went to hear a lot of authors speak because I'm such a prolific reader myself. And a lot of writers would talk about the fact that they had this book in them that they just had to write. And I had not had that experience in college at all, or even through my early 20s. I have stacks and stacks of drafts that will never see the light of day, like books I started. One of my favorites that I think I have 3 chapters of that I started when I was like 24 is titled One Dead Toe. Like,
Not a whole foot of dead
no,
toes,
just
just
a
one.
toe. Just a toe. And like I had a vision for how that story was going to start, that it was going to be somebody with frostbite in an operating room, and like there was this family connection that was unknown, and then I didn't know what I was doing.
Then maybe a
Um,
flashback to how they got frostbite and that
right.
happened.
Yeah, right. Maybe at some point I'll pull it back out. I don't think so,
Yeah.
but maybe. But then in my early 30s, I had my son, and my mom was diagnosed with young onset Alzheimer's in her 50s. And so she was losing all the same skills that he was gaining. And because I was such a reader, I went to the bookstore and was trying to find anything I could on young onset in particular, because it's much different. I mean, the trajectory of the disease isn't different, but the process is different if you're getting it,
Uh-huh.
in your late 80s versus your 50s.
Yeah.
And so I journaled all through that because I was caregiving for her and for my son. And so the first book that I wrote was actually a memoir about that process of losing a mom and becoming a mom at the same time. And I thought to myself, like, okay, I get what writers were talking about, where they had to tell this story. Like, it was so cathartic for me to write, to go through that grieving process. There was just so much healing that I did over the course of that journey.
Mm.
And then I was sort of done with that book, and I thought, okay, well, I did it. And I was about to kind of go back to my old path and my career of being a speech therapist. And I was out hiking in the Pacific Northwest with my kiddo, who was like 5 at the time, and my husband. And we pull into the trailhead, and there are these 5 like burly Oregon mountain guys, and they've got their gear and they're just huge and bearded and like just what you think of like Oregon hiker. And then out of the very back of the car comes this young woman who's like in her early 20s, and she's tiny, she's short and petite, and I kid you not, she is dressed in hot pink, head to toe, hot pink. And I was like, who is this woman? How is she with these guys? Like, I don't understand. I say that I just sort of like followed them up the trail. My husband will tell you that like I stalked them and I was like, we gotta get up to the top. But we got up to the top of the trail and I lost them. They were much faster than us, but at the top, there's this like rocky outcropping, and then it just drops down to the Columbia River, like 2,000 feet. And I thought, like, ooh, that would be an interesting way to kill someone. Like, what if you just push them off the ledge? Like,
Yeah.
how easy would that be? So anyway, I went home from that and I started writing a book. I had never written a mystery before.
Mhm.
And that became the first of my Pacific Northwest mysteries.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
I love that story. Several things that I want to remark about that you mentioned. One thing about all of the stacks of unfinished manuscripts that you have, that makes me feel so much better because my life is just made up of all of these unfinished books that I've started. Like since I was in high school, like, you know, I'd be like, oh, this, I want to write this. I won a writing contest in third grade. And that's when I decided I want to be a writer. And I
Yeah.
loved reading. I read everything. And so I would start all of these books. And so I have like notebooks full of them. And then when I started getting computers, I have every computer I've ever had has all of these files on it of, you know, books that I've started or stories that I've written, you know. So, but it's just been since my daughter has been born that I have actually started, like, I figured out, I started learning more about the craft of writing and about how to actually get from, I'd come up with this great beginning, but then I would never know how to, you know, to get to the ending. And so I would always just stop in the middle, but I learned more about the craft of it. But now I feel like if I just had more time, and I think about back before my daughter was born when I had so much time, but I
Yes.
didn't feel like I knew how to write a book. Now I know how to write a book, but I don't have time.
Oh, the bane of our existence, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
but not that that sounds like negative towards my daughter. I'm so glad she's here, but
Yes,
you
yes.
know, you don't have a lot of time once you're a mom. So,
So
um,
true.
but I've loved it. And then also about thinking of ways that people can be murdered. I do that too. Like the other day, my husband and daughter and I were at an aquarium and we were climbing these stairs, and there was this big, like a skeleton model of some kind of like whale or something like that. And I'm like, oh, what if someone was pushed over the banister and they landed on the whale? You know, and I was just, yes. And I was like, oh, I've got to put that in a book. So,
Right.
and so everything I'm doing, like I'll start telling my husband later, you know, that would be a way somebody could be murdered. What if this happened? And so far he hasn't been that disturbed by it, but, or at least he hasn't told me about it if he is.
Yeah, I know. That's true. Well, and my dad, who's like, sweet and pushing 80 now, he'll call me. He'll be like, I was at this concert at this old historic church in Portland, and the songs were so beautiful, but I'm looking up and I see this giant chandelier. I'm just thinking that could fall like somebody. I'm like, Dad.
You've got him
So
doing
it's
it.
catching, yeah. Or your daughter's going to go home. That was the other thing that would happen when Luke was in middle school. My son was in middle school, and I'd be like brainstorming titles, and he'd go to school and be like, "Oh yeah, at dinner last night we were trying to come up with punny murder titles." Like I'm waiting for the call.
Yeah, Sarah has just gotten to where she's asking me about what is your book about, you know, and
Yeah.
I'm like, well, somebody getting murdered. So,
Yes.
and
It's
she's kind of
healthy.
like, oh, like it's really hard to explain that to her. So,
Yeah.
and I do have a young adult or a children middle grade novel that I've written that I actually read to Sarah that she enjoyed, but I can't really read the cozy mysteries to her. I don't think she'd really be interested in it at this point. So,
Right. Yeah. A few more years.
yeah, yeah. So one of my viewers wanted me to ask, it was Salome Green Eyes, that was her name, and she asked, what were some of your favorite books to read as a young adult?
Oh, wow. I mean, I literally would read anything I could get my hands on. I went to the library every Friday. I would come home with a stack of books, and devour them over the weekend, go back, repeat. As a young adult, so I'm thinking like this is at a point where I'm reading solo probably.
Mhm.
I read a lot of series, so obviously like Agatha Christie, I breezed through all the Trixie Belden books. I loved this series called Betsy Tassy Tibb, which was,
Yes.
do you know? Oh yeah, like
Uh-huh.
nobody I feel like knows that. It's about
Yes.
these young friends growing up in the Midwest. I liked a lot of historical fiction. I read Maya Antonia. One of my favorite like coming of age books was I Capture the Castle by
I've read
Dodie
it by
Smith.
Dodie Smith, right? The same
Yeah,
author of the 101 Dalmatians.
which you would
Yes.
never know because
Yeah,
those
they're so
could
different.
not
I
be
know.
more different. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, I read a lot of Willa Cather. I breezed through all of the oh gosh, I'm gonna forget. It's not the Babysitters Club because that's the new one. Oh, Sweet Valley High. That was like
Yes. Yeah.
romance,
Yeah.
love in like late middle school, early high school. Yeah.
I liked a lot of those too. The Betsy Tassy Tib. I have one of those. I tried that and didn't like it that much, but I was older when I was reading it. I wasn't a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, I read the Babysitter's Club. I also read the Sweet Valley High books. I've heard you mention before Elizabeth Peters that you loved the
I
Elizabeth
loved Elizabeth Peters.
yeah,
That was like a little bit,
older.
when I'm thinking young adult, that was kind of more like, yeah, probably like high school. I got into Elizabeth
Yeah,
Peters, Dorothy L.
yeah.
Sayers, like some of
Mhm.
those. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. My grandmother was the branch manager of the library in my town. I thought of her as the librarian, but she would always say, "No, I don't have a library science degree." She grew up in the Depression, and so she didn't have any kind of degree, but
Right.
she worked, at the library, and so I would go there a lot of days after school. And Granny introduced me to the Elizabeth Peters books, and we would read those together, and they were just so good, such good
So good.
mysteries.
I know. Yeah. Anything that
Well,
has that adventure to it. Yeah. Uh-huh.
yeah. What about now? Who are some of your favorite authors and some of your favorite series, whether cozy mystery or, any other kind?
Yeah, it's harder to read a cozy when you're writing a lot of them. That's another sort of thing to kind of put in the back of your head if you're writing. I tend to not read cozies while I'm working on a manuscript myself because I'm just too into my own world. So what I will do is I will save those for breaks between my own writing. But I definitely have had some favorites. I love Reese Bowen's Her Royal Spyness series.
Okay,
Have you
I've
ever
heard of that. I haven't read it.
Oh, it's a total delight. It's also like 20 something books, but I can't wait for them to come out. I'm a big Louise Penny fan.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
I haven't
Uh,
read Louise Penny either. I'm feeling guilty that I haven't
it's
read
all good. Yeah. I
her.
love Kate Atkinson. She has a whole series. Well, she has multiple series. I like Ellie Griffiths. I love anything that's British.
Yeah.
And then I read a lot of sci-fi, I read a lot of literary fiction, I read historical fiction, I read some romance. I'm not a huge romance reader, but I like a rom-com. I'm not a big like spicy romance fan. I have nothing against it. It's just not my cup of tea.
Hmm. Yeah, I've what the main thing that I've found while I'm trying to write is I just don't have time to read.
I know.
Any time that I could be reading, I'm like, I need to be writing, and so I'm not reading as much. I read generally now it's mostly at night before I go to bed, and sometimes I'll find time to squeeze it in. But yeah, before I was trying to write, and actually finish books and try to get something published, I've spent a lot more of my time throughout the day reading, but it's hard to find time for it when you're writing.
It is hard to find time, but all of that reading that I think we did is also just great studying to become a writer. I think the best thing that you can do if you want to write is read and read and read widely. I mean, definitely read within the genre you want to write, but also read everything you can.
Yeah, it's such a cliche, but reading and writing do go hand in hand.
Yeah.
If you like reading, you're probably going to like writing and probably be better at it. So
Yeah.
it definitely seems like that. Will you tell us a little bit more about your writing process?
Yeah, I have a pretty regimented writing process, mainly because when I started, after I was up at the top of that cliff and was like, I think we could push somebody off the top. And I scurried back down and got to work. My son was in kindergarten.
Mhm.
And so I had a finite amount of time from
Yes.
9 a.m. in the morning to 2 p.m. And so I would drop him off to school, come back,
Hmm.
be done by 2 o'clock. So that tends to be my writing schedule to this day. It's also kind of my sweet spot. Like I am a morning person, so that's helpful. I have a routine that I get out for a long, like 4 or 5 mile walk every morning, because I just feel like that kind of opens me up creatively. Yes. And then I write anywhere from 2 to 3,000 words a day now.
Hmm.
And I usually get that done by like 2 o'clock. And I don't write on the weekends. This is my job. So I've from the beginning, I really tried to treat it that way. And I think one of the most important things you can do as a new writer is preserve and protect whatever time you're going to devote to writing. And however that looks, like there's never one right answer. Like you should run away screaming if somebody says to you, there's one way to write and this is the only way to do it. Not true at all. Like some writers, I have friends who go to like super busy coffee shops and there's all this stuff going on. I can't do that because when I'm working on a book here in my office, I'm talking to myself. I'm up walking around like I'm acting. People would worry about me at a coffee shop. And at a coffee shop, I would also be incredibly distracted because I love watching people. Like that's great for me if I'm trying to like build a new character or a world. Like I will go and take copious notes and just pay attention or like soak up those sensory details. But if we're talking like words on the page, 2 to 3,000 words a day, and that usually gets me a pretty terrible rough draft in like 6 weeks or so. And then what I do is I put it aside and I work on a different project to take a brain break from it. And then I come back and I call it layering editing, because I just think it's an easier way to approach it, especially because for me, that is what I'm doing. Once it goes off to my publishing team, then it is like editing. But then I just try to layer in sensory details or the baking or Redwood Grove and Annie's bookish details. So it usually now takes me, I would say, start to finish 3 to 4 months to get a book done.
Yeah, it's always so interesting to me to hear about authors' writing processes. And you're right, everybody, does something different. It's interesting how a lot of writers say that they like to walk. Like that's
Yeah.
something that, and I think because when I'm walking, I'm also thinking about, oh, this could happen. And it's easier to do that when you're walking. It's easier to kind of plot things out. It helps your brain work a little better somehow.
Yeah, I know. I don't know what it is, but maybe there's something kinesthetic about like movement and ideas or
There probably is. Somebody's probably written a paper about it,
right.
about how
Yeah.
that helps. Well, the Secret Bookcase series just started like last summer, right? Like it's
Yeah.
been about a year
Hmm.
ago that it started. And
Yeah.
so it's about to conclude with the sixth book. And I think you've also published a couple of books in the Bakeshop Mystery series this year as well.
Yeah.
How are you able to write and publish so many books so quickly? Like, how does that work?
I don't know. Yeah. No, I really think I'm, I've been at this since like 15 years now. So there's really like any job that you do, it gets easier is a hard word. I trust the process more is maybe the
Mhm.
better answer. Like I know that I can kind of bust out this first draft pretty quickly.
Mhm.
And you build muscle memory, right?
Yeah.
So I've written 45 books. So it's like, okay, my mind knows how to structure a mystery, all of that sort of thing. The challenge becomes how do you keep it fresh and like I'm doing a lot of things now that are not exactly in the mystery genre, also to push myself, because I think it's important that we keep growing and challenging ourselves as writers. Um, but early on, I think I was much more worried then of like, oh God, I have this terrible first draft now. Like it's a mess. What am I going to do with it? Now I just know, like, okay, yeah, it's going to be a mess. You just have to get the story on the page. Then you're going to come back to it and make it better and clean it up and all of those things. And then, like I mentioned earlier, too, I really do have such a collaborative team. And the process is very different working with Storm, my UK publisher, because they do have this very rapid fire release schedule, which has been a great challenge for me at this phase of my career too, because it's forcing me to go like, oh, okay, I was in my zone where I was just like, ooh, 2,000 words a day. Like, oh, maybe today I'm going to write five, or like, shake it up a little bit.
Yeah, that's great that it's challenging you. One thing that I feel like I've learned now is that I can complete a book. For a long time, I was like, I'm never going to actually finish one. But now that I have done it, it's making starting this new book easier because I'm like, okay, I've done this before. I've done it twice now. So, I can do this. And I think you do learn more what works for you and what's more efficient. So I don't know if I could ever, have like 6 or 8 books a year published, but
Oh, I think we should timestamp this. And then in a few years, let's come back and watch it. And you'll be like, oh, I had 8 books this year.
oh, that would be awesome, Ellie. Let's pray that into existence.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Well, and then the other thing too is just like I didn't write all of those in one year too. Some of that, like, the publishing schedule is set up. So it was like the first 2 books came out together. And then so some of that is built into the timeline too. But yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I get that. But that's still an amazing amount of writing to do in a year. So that's amazing that you're able to do that. And they're such good books too. One of the things that I've just been interested in your books, in a lot of cozy mysteries, it seems like the main character has an antagonistic relationship with the law enforcement, like with, it's like the bumbling sheriff who's coming in and, trying to solve it, and who's incompetent, and he doesn't want the sleuth to have anything to do with it. But I've noticed in the Secret Bookcase series and in the Bakeshop mysteries, like in the Secret Bookcase, the detective is Annie's former professor, and they have a great relationship. And then in the Bakeshop series, the main detective is you call him the professor, and he's involved with her mom. And so, it seems like they have a good relationship, and the cops aren't portrayed as like antagonistic characters. So I'm just wondering about your reasoning behind that.
Yeah, I think again, because I read so many cozies, I was just trying to find a way to like flip the genre a little bit when I first started. In my first series, Meg, who's the reporter, she has a little bit more of an antagonistic relationship with the sheriff, which develops for a reason. But I just sort of like the fact that, like, I don't want to say it's tongue in cheek, but there is a little bit of like, come on, a pastry chef is never going to be invited on the scene of the crime.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought it might be more interesting if, and especially with the bake shop, like Jules doesn't always solve the case either.
Yeah.
Which is not always true in this genre. So it just is a personal choice, I think, more than anything.
Yeah, and I have found it refreshing. I mean, I don't mind when there's an
No,
antagonistic
I don't either. Yeah,
relationship with the police.
exactly.
Like, it doesn't bother me. It was just, as I was reading yours, I was like, oh, they're working with the policemen. They're not fighting with them all the time.
Right. I know. I found like it was easier from a writing perspective as a way into the crime scene too.
Mm-hmm.
Because yes, you have to suspend a lot of belief, right? If you're reading this kind of genre where a pastry chef or a professor, whoever's going to be part of it, right? But I really try to make my books as grounded in reality as possible. Like I do a lot of research about the baking and like the craft beer scene or owning a bookstore, Agatha Christie lore, because I think if the rest of the book isn't really grounded in reality, it's much easier for a reader to pull out of the story or start to question things. And so that was just kind of an easier way, I think, especially early on in my writing career, to be like, oh, okay, well, if the professor is already connected to her, then maybe he is going to give her a little more information than he would normally give a pastry chef, let's say.
Yeah. 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 That's, just always a neat thing to ask writers about how they come up with the ideas that they have and the different things that you do in your writing. Well, so in addition to writing your cozy mysteries, as we've talked about a little, you're also a writing coach. And I'm so glad that you are, because you have helped me so much with figuring out what to do with the books that I've written. So tell us a little more about how you became interested in being a writing coach and some of the ways that you help aspiring authors.
Yeah, I mean, so I am the black sheep of my family in being a writer because all of my family is in the world of teaching. My dad is a professor, he taught English. My mom was a school counselor. My sister's a math teacher. My brother's a dean at a university. I got my start in early education as a speech therapist. So I think like teaching is just part of my worldview. And it really wasn't until like the pandemic. And at that point in time, I had written, I'd been writing for a decade then. I'd learned a lot about my own process. I've learned a lot about the publishing industry. I've written for 4 different publishing houses now. I've had, lots of editors. I've written and published some stuff independently. So I felt like, oh, maybe I'm at a point where I might be able to offer something back. And I had quite a few writers reach out to me during the pandemic wanting help. And it just sort of like built naturally from there. And I have to tell you, I love it so much. Like I absolutely love it. I had no idea what kind of just like depth and I do think like there's just something about being able to hopefully hold space for a writer too. Like a lot of sessions people like end up crying and not because I'm like telling them their work is horrible or anything like that, but because it's really you have to be vulnerable and you have to take a risk to say like I've written all these terrible manuscripts. I have stacks sitting in my closet. I want to do this. And so I just love getting to champion new writers. And my slant as a coach is always to hopefully just like help you grow. And it's such a delight. Like one of the books I had some books next to me of what I'm reading, but like one of them is my student who just published.
Oh,
Um,
wow. I was just reading about that book, or I think I heard another book. It was the Beach Bum.
oh yeah,
Yeah, you've been on
bookworm.
her
Yeah,
show before
yeah,
too. Yeah, she was
yeah.
talking about that. That looks so good.
So great. Deadly Drafts by Courtney Bradley. But like I get a copy of a student's book in the mail and I'm like doing backflips. I'm more excited than I am for my own stuff because I just really think we need more stories in the world. Everybody has such a unique like I don't know how much you want to talk about your own stuff, but like I am so attached already to what's going to happen with this story. I want this world. I want the gothic piece, like all of the things. So yeah, I might get a little too invested, is what I'm saying.
Well, I mean, you have just been so helpful to me. Like I'd finished a draft of the book, the first draft of it. And in my mind, I was like, well, I'm finished with this book. So what do I do? And talking with you about it helped me figure out, okay, I'm not really finished with the book. I need to go back in. And you just asked the exact right questions to help me figure out there needs to be a little more. Like I have a little more that I could do with this. And so my book is about an English professor named Lucy, whose department chair is murdered. And Lucy, of course, finds the body and is suspected of being the murderer and has to help solve this mystery. And as I was talking with you about it, you were like, well, tell me more about this college where Lucy works and tell me more about this Southern Gothic, because I had mentioned that there was a little Southern Gothic element because it takes place in the South. And that gave me the whole idea for a subplot involving Wailing Winnie, the Southern Gothic author who used to live and work at Lucy's college. And Lucy starts doing research on Wailing Winnie and has to solve that mystery as well. And then you also helped me come up with that. You helped me realize I needed more backstory for Lucy. And I ended up kind of using my own life somewhat because, as I've shared with my viewers on here and I shared with you during this process, my dad passed away very unexpectedly. I've got his book that he wrote up here.
Yeah.
That's a book. It's with Storyworth, where people can write their stories down and have it published as a book. So I actually, incorporated that in as part of Lucy's backstory, that her dad had passed away, and that's something that she's dealing with. And, it's just been such an amazing process for me. And now I'm at the stage where I'm querying agents, and, it's an up and down thing where, I'm so excited because I've had 2 agents who've requested my full manuscript,
which
and
is huge.
yes,
It's huge.
I'm
Yeah.
so happy about that. And I tell you about it and you're happy too. And then both times with those 2 agents, I've gotten back very, very kind rejection letters but I've been using those rejection letters to figure out, what can I do to make my writing better. And, what I ended up deciding to do was start another series. Eventually, I'm going to continue the Lucy series. But as I was talking to you, you said, well, go with where your energies are taking you. And they were taking me to this new series. So that's kind of what I'm working on now. But, I'm also still in the process in the query trenches, as I've heard others say. And it's been really helpful to have you there just guiding me and keeping me from getting so much into despair, but especially helping me with, figuring out that the Wailing Winnie plotline and Lucy's backstory. That's just been so helpful.
I'm so glad. Well, I want to just say to all of your viewers that I still, to this day, I'm going to beg you until you let me do it. It is by far the best example I've ever had of somebody sending me an original opening page and then going back and seeing a new opening page because your hook was just like, I'm in then. You did the work immediately. So good. Chef's kiss. No,
That's
no.
that is so nice. So Ellie, I had sent you my first 15 pages, and then I wrote you and said, wait, Ellie, don't read that. I've come up with how I can change it. But you had already read it. And so you wrote me, and you were very nice, but you said, the hook is very important. You've got
Yeah.
to draw people in, and I think you could be a little stronger with that. And, I have to tell you, I did cry a little bit. And I told my husband, she didn't like the opening pages, but she's right. She's right. They're not good. And I think there was some time where I was like,
I
maybe.
don't think I would have said they're not good.
No,
Please.
you didn't say
No.
that. But in my mind,
Yeah.
I catastrophize a little bit.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And that's what I did. And so my husband was like, no, just do what she says. And so
Yeah.
I did. And then, you sent me back, oh, I want to use this as a before and after example. And
Yeah.
I'm kind of like, is that because the after was so good or because the before was so bad?
No, not at all. I mean, the before was like, I think I would say like 80% of writers would go out with the before as a query, guaranteed. But the after was just like, yes, like you just see immediately like, oh, okay, here's the story, which I think is so great. But early on when I was first trying to find my way through writing a cozy, I joined a few writers groups, and so many of them were just so negative in their slant. And so my goal always as a coach is to be constructive, hopefully, to give you something to work with. But I always want to cheer people on because, like you're saying too, being in the query trenches or this up and down that every single writer goes through. Like you cannot find a writer on the planet that doesn't go through it. And it's not just in the query process. Then it's going to be once you've published the book. You're not every reader is going to resonate with it. You're going to have negative reviews. It's unavoidable. Go read Jane Eyre's reviews or, like any of the classics, right? That's the piece for me that like, if we are choosing to do this thing, like it's the hardest thing to make yourself raw and put something that you've created out into the world. So I want people cheering me on for sure.
Yes. And you are such a great cheerleader, but it's more than just being a cheerleader. It's also just guiding me. Like I said, I would never have thought of doing the Wailing Winnie plot line if you had not just started asking me about that. And I'm like, oh, well, that's something I could do. And, just talking with you just solidified in that in my mind. So, I'm going to have a link to your website down in the description box. And, if anybody is interested in like writing coaching, or you also have like a course that writers can take where it's like a step-by-step, like how to write a book.
Exactly. Yeah.
Course.
Yeah.
So, it's just been so valuable to me. So I know I have people who watch this channel who are also aspiring writers. So that could definitely be something that, other people are interested in. And obviously you've got some success. I mean, some of your former students have published books. So that's great.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a lengthy stack now, which again, just makes me so excited because I think, we're just like building this community of writers. And that's the other thing that I think sometimes there's this pervasive myth that writers are really protective, competitive, and I don't find that to be true. Are there the rare occasions where that happens? Sure. But for the most part, especially within the cozy mystery community, everyone is so supportive and welcoming. And we all know it's like, okay, you read this series and I read this one. It's not like you can only read my books and no one else's. That's not the vibe at all.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Ellie, I've enjoyed talking with you so much. I'm going to go ahead and ask you the final question that I have, and that is, what advice would you have for those interested in writing and publishing? And you've talked about that a little bit already, but if you would just kind of give us some final words for people who might be interested in doing that.
Yeah, I think two things. One, you should take the work very seriously, but you don't need to take yourself that seriously.
Mm.
Which is, I think, one of the ways then we get in our heads, right? And then I think when you are starting an idea or a project, say yes to everything. It's like, if you know anything about improv and you're on the stage, you
Yeah.
say yes no matter what. That doesn't mean that all those yeses are going to end up in the book, but especially when you're first starting a story, to really let your creativity fly, you have to explore every possibility and not shut stuff down from the beginning.
That's such great advice. Thank you so much. Well, Ellie, this has been so fun having you on. And, every conversation I've had with you has just been like, I'm chatting with a friend. I may have told my viewers that you're my best friend. So just
Totally.
throwing that out there. But I so appreciate you coming on, and everybody should make sure to read A Body at the Book Fair. Go ahead and start at the beginning of the series. You can get through them quickly and get to that one. Your books are just so good. So I definitely recommend everybody trying those out.
And then once your series, multiple are published, we'll come back and we'll have a party for that. Yeah.
Yes, you
Okay.
have to come back at that point, whenever that point may be, Ellie. I
Okay.
definitely, we're having a huge party then.
Yeah, it's happening. Okay, good.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Ellie. I'll talk to you
Thanks for having me.
later.